Välkommen till min fjord. This is Archaon Month Day 40. And today, Dhorgar is finished. How awesome is that? Really, he is done. So that's the short and sweet look of what he is like right now. So technically, I'm not 100% done. I haven't done the cleanup on this guy. Just because I really want to move on and paint Archaon. I'm obviously going to do a bit of cleanup before I consider him completely finished. But now I just want to move on, paint something that isn't a gigantic monster. So we're going to zoom in a bit on that guy, or on this guy, in a bit. But I got a request from Snesok, and he was wondering a bit about the things that I'd use to paint him. And honestly, I haven't used a lot of tools to work on this model in particular. Mostly it's been just regular paintbrushes. So you guys can sort of see. Here's all the paintbrushes I've used. First up, there's a wash brush. This is an old Citadel wash brush, so it's got that like big fluffy tip. Very good for applying big washes. So this is what I use to mix all the shades to make the blending for the skin and the scales. Really a workhorse of the first 20 hours of this project. And then the main brushes were seriously these three. How small are those? You can barely see them. So this is the Citadel small layer brush. This is the largest regular brush I've used on this model. I think that's saying something about how I've approached this. One, that I'm kind of crazy, and two, that I've tried to maintain control over the details all the way through. So, Citadel small layer brush, going down to a Army Painter detail brush, which is slightly smaller. I wouldn't say it's a lot smaller, just a little bit smaller than the small layer. I use it mostly because it holds the tip well, though these two brushes have taken a serious beating during this painting process. The third brush that I've used is the Wargamer, or the Army Painter Wargamer Collection Insane Detail brush, which is, in most cases, a great brush for painting eyes, painting the details, inlaid details on the arms and stuff of Dhorgar. This guy got used not a huge amount, sorry about that, but quite a bit. So really, not a large amount of brushes. This is also why the model took so long, because I've washed tons of layers and used very small brushes. If you use larger brushes, if you dry brush, stuff like that, you'll cut down on time and you'll get a really, really good result. Next up, thing that I used, Citadel paint palette. You don't honestly need to use a paint palette, but I really like them. They're just, they make it easy to blend. You can see this is sort of, here and here I've sort of been blending the blacks, and then all of these other colors are stuff that I've used on this model or on a slightly different model. Really just, the trick about these is that paint or water doesn't go into them, so you get a slightly better lead time on drying your paints. But if you want to do that properly, I also made a wet palette. Now this is a poor man's wet palette. This is an IKEA box with some tissue paper inside. So you take some tissue paper, put it down. This is baking paper, the stuff that you put on your trays when you put stuff in the oven. Make sure it's like waxy or like waxed. Not entirely sure what the concept is in English. You just put those together. You pour a controlled amount of water over this. Make sure it soaks through. Make sure the paper itself is moist, and you'll get a really good, cheap wet palette. Like, it's a piece of tissue and a piece of baking paper. I think all told, this probably costs like $10, and I will have a wet palette out of this. Like, I'll switch out the paper and the tissue as needed, but seriously, it doesn't cost anything. So that's great for when you're like doing blending, doing detail work. Obviously, I've exchanged this one quite a few times, so this is just like some random colors. And if you want to have a specific consistency that you want to keep, doing a cheap man's wet palette, super good. Alright, so that's some of the tips and tricks of the stuff I've been using to paint Dhorgar. Now I'm going to show you guys what he looks like painted. So here is the completed Dhorgar in as good a glory as I can get him with my current equipment. I'm going to zoom in a bit, but I wanted to try and get the full effect of him. You guys have been paying attention, or for those of you who have been paying attention over the last 40 days, there's a lot of labor in this guy, a lot of love, a lot of new techniques, a lot of trying out stuff. Not everything's worked as well as I'd hope, but a lot of it has really turned out well in the end. So I'm actually super pleased with how Dhorgar's turned out. So you can sort of see all the details coming together, how all the little like bits and pieces that I've been working on every day has in the end sort of turned into a single giant model. But we're going to zoom in a little bit here and show you some more of those details. Let's see, with all this classical manual adjusting of the aim. Sorry for the shaky cam effect. So first up is the obvious one in the heads. I think, and I'm quite pleased with how they've turned out. They're very varied in color, so they're very obviously different from the beast itself. Like, it's clear that these don't belong to whatever sort of monster Dhorgar should have been. And I think they each capture the personality of their patron god, more or less. Again, the Cornhead's the one that I'm least pleased with, just because I'm not entirely sure on the hair. But I think I'm gonna let it be for a while. I need to think about it, but I don't think I'm going to change it. I'm really pleased with how the blending has sort of turned out, with areas like here and down here. There's a clear blend in a lot of places that makes it so it's not just like straight from the dark to the white. There's a small transition over, and that was the effect that I was going for. Like, could it be better? Of course it could be. But for being the first time that I've done a large scale blending project, or even the first time I've properly done any sort of blending, I'm very, very happy with how this has turned out. Really, it's just I'm very, very happy with this model as it stands. I think I don't think I'd win any painting awards for it, because it isn't like traditionally eye-catching. It doesn't have a lot of strong colors. It doesn't have a huge amount, like, it doesn't look maybe as time-consuming as it is, and it probably isn't as technically proficient as the amount of effort that's been put in. But I really, really like how it's turned out. I think for myself personally, as a painter, as a hobbyist, I've learned a lot of things, I've tried out some things, and I've seen what I want to try to do with models. So, like, overall, as a work, as a thing, I am very pleased with how it's turned out. I'm just learning a lot, and I'm actually finishing this guy. Like, it took 40 days to paint him, and I haven't painted Archaon himself yet. So doing these painting videos really helped that. So that's Dhorgar, the Mount of Archaon, the Everchosen. I really, really like this model. I haven't been talking lore and such as much as I would have wanted to. It's kind of been disappearing in the late night uploads and stuff like that. Just because, you know, I have a full-time job, and every day I've been painting at least 2 hours on this guy, which means that, you know, I have to take those hours from somewhere. But if this video sounds kind of final, it is not. I still have to paint Archaon himself. He is right here. I've just barely begun on the sword. So my next videos, my next painting videos will be about this little guy. Thankfully, it's not going to take another 40 videos. Painting a model of this scale is much, 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 much quicker than painting Dhorgar. Literally, when you want to do one layer on a model like Dhorgar, that's still like, you know, 4 or 5 times the amount of work that it would take for this model. So it's going to go much quicker. You know, I might even be done by the end of the week. Who knows? So anyways, tune in for a bit of Archaon tomorrow, and please continue watching. And if there's anything you guys want to hear or see, just shout out. But until next time, ha det bra!